Hi, this is Kavita Kalsi of the European Development Days here in Brussels for Devex. I'm here with Serguei Ouattara from the EU Africa Chamber of Commerce. Hi Sergei, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So first of all, congratulations. Last year you set up the EU Africa Chamber of Commerce. Can you tell me a little bit about what your mission is and the process of setting that up?
Yeah, so basically Chamber of Commerce was launched last year. It's an initiative that came from diaspora people living in Europe.
Okay.
We have two main goals. The first one is to advocate for the African private sector here in Europe.
Right.
We're not in Brussels, we have all those European institutions where important decisions are made and discussions regarding the African private sector, and there was a missing actor, I would say, a missing voice from the private sector in Africa, what's happening in Africa. So one of our goals is really to support and bring the voice of African private sector in front of those policymakers in Europe, and also make this bridge back to Africa. The second goal we have is to promote the business relationship between EU and Africa, and especially sustainable business relationship. We would like to change a little bit these trends and go for more win-win partnerships and reduce this gap. Between Europe and Africa, there are some differences in terms of business culture, in terms of understanding of how business is done, in terms of priority also, because the level of development is not the same. And through our experience in Europe, myself, for example, I used to stay more than 15 years in Europe. So we have, through our diaspora network, a good understanding of what are the requirements and the mindset from the European private sector, but also from our roots and really keeping this connection with Africa. We know how people think in Africa, what are their priorities, and our goal is really to make this match between those two actors in order to have win-win relationship, business relationship. And aside that, we have some programs that we develop in order to reach those goals. Namely, we launched in October in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, a pilot program for entrepreneurship in rural electrification.
Okay.
We started this with the EDF, the French electricity company, and also with the support of government of Burkina and Mali, and local actors like academia. So the goal here for that program is to promote entrepreneurship, especially for young people, and give them all the resources they require in order to achieve those creating business activities in Africa.
Okay, can you talk a bit more about how you're going about doing that? How are you promoting entrepreneurship in this particular project or others?
Well, basically, a main idea on which we found our activity, especially regarding the young people, is that young people are motivated, they have energy, they have momentum, they have ideas, but what lacks with them is experience in doing business. So basically the process is we focus on them as the drivers of the development in terms of creating businesses, but what we also promote is the support from the local private sector. They know the field, they know how to access to the markets. The support also from the European private sector. They have some resources, they have some objectives also, the business objective that they would like to achieve in terms of relationship with Africa. And also there are important actors like government, there is national policies regarding employment, regarding youth. Those different actors are for us very important, and of course donors that could support also in terms of capacity building. But basically the idea behind is that the private sector invest for himself, because we think that these young people, they are the future generation, they are the future private sector actors, and so the current private sector actors should invest for the next generation.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's really interesting to hear about the projects that you're doing on the ground. Let's just talk as well about what you think the role of government is in promoting the private sector, because this is something that's really key to what you're doing, your whole mission.
Yes, of course. The government is a very important actor. They have the ownership on the national policies, development. They have the role of deciding the direction in which the country should go in different topics. And first thing that we'd like to really emphasize on is that the government should involve more the private sector in discussions regarding the development of the private sector, regarding all those issues important for the development of the private sector. And another point also which is important is that in some countries in Africa, the state budget relies on the aid from international organizations, and for us it's important that the government make efforts to trade this format of funding, the government for the incomes coming from the private sector in terms of taxes and so on.
Okay, and are you lobbying for this kind of increased role for the private sector in discussions with government? Are you lobbying for this at the European level? Is it something you're planning on doing, or are you doing it also in African countries in which you're working? Is it something that you're able to do yet?
Yes, we do this because when we take the economic context of Europe now. European companies are more and more willing. They are more and more willing to take risk to go on external markets, especially Africa. When we have some messages on our media channels, wars, fragile states and issues. So it's not encouraging for European private sector to invest in Africa. But on the other side, we also see that in some countries the investment environment is very good, and there are really important progress that are made. So our goal really is to show that in Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent with different countries with specific situations to be considered. So our role is really match those needs and try to bring more, make information more useful for external actors.
Okay, well, we've talked about the private sector, the government's role in promoting private sector. What else could funders or donors do to promote this? What do you think particularly from an EU perspective? What could they do to help?
Yes, one of the points that we really encourage the donors or international organization is to promote the sustainability and inclusiveness in funding programs or capacity building programs. When we see, for example, this entrepreneurship program, we have several examples where we understand that basically it's not only a question of funding, needing money. Sometimes there are some projects where we don't need so much money or so much funding to make it successful. So for us, it's important to make this inclusion of various actors, the civil society, the private sector actors, in order to have programs that really match the needs, the local needs. Another point is also the communication. Recently we support some of our actors from African private sector to submit, to apply for funding from the European Union, and for example, and they were not aware that there are some programs, some funding programs that address them. It was programs specially targeted for ACP countries, but the information on those programs does not get through. So what we would like really to encourage is find ways of communication, while the official channel, regular channel, or maybe through other organizations like our organization. One of our goals is also to bring this information to the target people.
Well, Serguei, thank you so much. It's been really interesting. So many points. I think we should talk more off camera, but thank you so much. Please keep watching for more interesting videos like this. Thank you.